how often should organizations conduct a cybersecurity risk assessment, and who should be responsible for leading it?
Okay. Uh, so it's kind of fun how all the questions and the answers fit together when you get into a topic like this, because like the lessons learned with things like the SharePoint. I want to just touch on some of that for a minute, if I can.
Sure, of course.
uh, that was a 0-day exploit, which means to everybody out there that nobody knew about this as an issue. Somebody found out about it as an issue and used it against Microsoft before anybody was aware of it. And there was any time to make a patch, basically to mitigate the problem, right? And so how do you protect yourself as an organization against something like that? And what it comes back to is it's about your process. It's about those layers. It's about having layers of security. So if one thing fails, we have another thing to stop it. Today, in the landscape we face, it's not about, we used to say we're going to protect the organization, right? Now we're minimizing the damage. And that's the truth, because reality is nobody is able to ever say that they cannot be hacked, right? As you said, it is a human issue in most cases. You can have many controls in place, but if somebody clicks on a link, just by the nature of technology and the way things work, it honors that request and lets the payload in many cases if it's not configured well, right?
Right,
So it's
right.
about the process. What happens now when I have something that I didn't realize was going to ask me for my username and password? Do I have that policy in place that's going to take care of that? That's not something that a risk assessment is necessarily going to be able to help you with. And that's what your question was. So I'll get back to that for a second. But
Of course.
that, from a perspective of maturity and watching for changes in the organization and the fact that we have the human element, we can have controls, tools, things in place and configured properly that are now being maintained, and a human makes a change to turn the security off momentarily to make a change and forgets to turn it back on as well, right? That's still human error. It's just like clicking on a link in a phishing email. And how do you know about those things? By doing these assessments, right? Where you're doing these vulnerability assessments on all the systems in place, and you're looking at the risk and the data and the assets that you're protecting, and you're determining if it's an acceptable risk against these data assets as an organization or not. At which point you then make decisions on how to mature and make it better. Take away the risk. Risk is based on likelihood of an event happening or what the impact of that event is when it happens. So you're looking to lessen risk by lessening the likelihood or lowering the impact, right?
Right.
Those are the things that the cyber risk assessment is going to work with and help you know what it is you're looking at. Sorry, I know that was a really long
It's a
answer.
fantastic answer. And who, in your experience, who most often leads the risk assessment, that
So, I
process?
mean, that should certainly be the person in charge of the information security program, and that
Okay.
that can vary in organizations. We're looking at potential, the CISO,
Okay.
the executive team. It's not, as we mentioned in the beginning of the conversation here, it's not strictly an IT department kind of conversation. Don't This risk, this things that we're talking about, the cyber insurance, and the fact that we want to make sure a policy would be paid, a claim would be paid if we had an event, if our policy is there and active. Those are all executive level decisions and responsibilities. The risk lies at that level. So you can't just turn it over to the IT department and say they've got it covered and we're good. You have to verify that, because you will be the one held accountable if something goes wrong.